Hi everyone, Lisa here, and welcome to Freedom City Church Online, and happy Valentine's Day to those of you that are hopeless romantics like me, and those of you that just use today as an excuse to eat copious amounts of overpriced chocolate. Even though today is the day of flowers and chocolates and love, I'm even more excited about the fact that we have church today. I think God's been doing an incredible thing in our community. The last few Sundays have been so good. So welcome today, and we'll keep meeting here on this online platform for the time being until we're able to move into our new venue, which is incredible. But until then, keep firing up that comment section. If you haven't said hi there already, please do. I know people are always really stoked to connect even in that space. So we also have our dinner parties happening on Wednesday nights over Zoom for now. We've had some new faces join us this last week, and that was incredible. So if you are keen, please check out our social media pages or send us a message or check out the website. We'd love to get you connected in that way. Enough from me for now though. Jeff is ready to continue with the next section of our Freedom and Confinement series. So let's dive right in.
Welcome to Online Church, and welcome to a sunny day in Lisbon. It's like a little early spring for us. And what better opportunity than Valentine's Day to use it as an excuse to change things up a little bit. So we're doing things a little bit differently today, but we're Freedom City, so we always kind of do things a little bit differently. But today I'm excited because we didn't plan to do online church this long. We're hoping we don't have to do it much longer, but this is our reality. And we said all along, we're going to do this series, Freedom and Confinement, and we're going to trust that all of us, not just a couple of us, all of us will find some form of freedom in this confinement, that we will find ourselves dreaming bigger, seeing things more clearly, understanding God better. And I've had so many messages and phone calls this week where it's almost like the sun shining on us for the first time in weeks. It's like people are seeing things differently. People are experiencing God differently. I loved what Kevin shared on Wednesday, just understanding of God's grace. And it's not what he does or how he does it. It's like God pours out his grace. And I believe God's been pouring out his grace on us. We still go through things. Right now, Steph's probably still in hospital. Right now, people have still lost income. Right now, there's a lot of situations we're all facing. Right now, we're sitting with kids at home, no prospect of school. They still haven't learned the language, and it is scary for us to think of how this is going to work out. We can't figure it out. But God has been good in the midst of all the realities that we're all facing. And so I really do have an excitement in my heart. I have a pain in my heart every time I pray for all of you, as I realize that we're going through things we didn't expect to go through. But I'm also excited for the future. And what I really feel for today, and I spoke about this a little bit last week, is that it's time for us to pack up camp. And in Joshua 3, there comes a time where God says to the people of God, to the Israelites, he says to them, "You've been here long enough. It's now time to pack up your camp, take up your belongings, and follow me. We're moving into the promised land." And I want to say to each one of us, some of us have moved from another country to be here. Some of us have we've come to the city with new hope in our hearts, and then we've sat through this reality for the last few months, the last year. And I say God's not finished. God has seasons where he puts us in confinement for different reasons, and this seems to be like a mass confinement because of circumstances in the world and just the political realities. But in this place, God can do something deep inside of our hearts, and like I said, we've seen him do it. And so I have hope and faith that actually, as this season wraps up, that God prepares us for future seasons. I think it's time to go from survival to dreaming again, where we've had to survive. And there are times in God that we have to learn to survive something, to bunker down, to set up camp somewhere. And we've been through a season like that. And I think as a community, we've started to stumble upon what it looks like to look after each other in that season, what it looks like to care for one another and to be there for one another. And I'm so grateful for community in this season, not sitting here alone in Lisbon over this time. And so we've seen something of that. We've seen God work in different ways in the season, but I believe there's a season change for us as a community. It's time to start to dream what it would look like to live in the new space, post-COVID space, to dream what it looks like to take the opportunities and the open doors that he's going to create for us. And it's time to start to do that. It's time to start to dream again. It's time to start to think of what it looks like to flourish in the new space. And I believe the number one, the place we can start, and probably the most important place to start, is to look at what it looks like to love in this new world that we'll enter into. There's coming a time, it might not be as soon as we like it to be, there's coming a time post-COVID where God would have shifted something that would allow opportunity and inheritance for each one of us and for us as a church. And He would not have allowed this if it wasn't that on the other side of it was an inheritance. The same with the people of God in Israel, or the Israelites. He took them through a bunch of things. They had to go through battles, and they had to go through wars, and they had to camp out, and they had to cross seas, and they had to, but it was because there was an inheritance on the other end, and there is an inheritance for us to enter into on the other end of all of this. And so we need to start to prepare for what that looks like, what it looks like to take the promised land that He's called us to. And I want to start today, just a simple little thing on Valentine's Day, that we need to prepare to love. Prepare to be loved by God, prepare to love ourselves, and then prepare to love others. And I'll say that again. Prepare our hearts and change our hearts and mold ourselves to be loved by God. I think for most of us, it's not an issue of learning to love others. It's actually learning to receive the love of the Father when we least deserve it. And that's the grace that He gives to us. And then learning what it looks like to not only receive and experience that love, but then how to love others. What it looks like to be able to show love to people. And I want to use an example. I want Lisa to tell us what it's like, what this current season, like very real season that she's in right now, what it looks like and what it feels like for her and what she's experiencing and has learned. I want to say this, that 1 Corinthians 13 says that even if we prophesy, and we are able to speak in tongues and prophesy, and we do the most amazing works. It even says there, like, we do amazing works towards the poor and the destitute. We do incredible things throughout this country. We achieve our goals. If you do all of that and you do not have love in your heart, it counts for nothing. And what he's trying to do is that the hierarchy of value in a human's life is love. We need to be loved, and we need to love. And that transaction that happens, both of those, being loved and loving, when that transaction happens, the human heart opens up and flourishes. And we are called to be loved, to accept love, to receive love from others, to receive love in community. Sometimes it's harder to receive love than to give love. But we first need to understand the love of the Father, and so that we can understand that when people are loving us, it's an overflow of His love through them to us. And then our reciprocation of that, our reaction to that, is that we love. And so 1 Corinthians 13 is saying is that you can do so many things. You can live out your purposes. You can prophesy. You can practice your spiritual gifts even. But if you don't have love in your heart, pure love for people and for yourself, then all of that counts for nothing. And so I want all of our effort and all of our love to count for something. I want the effort in your heart and your life to count for something. And so we want to position ourselves to love, to be loved, to understand love, to love ourselves, and then to love others. And so I just quickly want Lisa to share this, because I think it'll be a helpful picture for us.
Hey guys, it's me again. So yeah, Jeff and I were just chatting a little bit this last week about what he's sharing today, and just kind of how that applies to my life, I guess, and just the season that I'm currently in. So I just wanted to share a little bit from the perspective of like a 20 weeks pregnant lady. So I took some notes, otherwise I will ramble on forever, so excuse me if I peek down at those. But yeah, obviously this series is on freedom and confinement, and so pregnancy is, I guess, a little bit like a form of confinement that our child is currently in. And as much as I know it's Sunday and you guys know the gender by now, I'm filming this on Thursday and Jeff doesn't get to know before anyone else, so it will be an it for now, but I guess you guys will know the gender soon. So anyways, back to the point. When we think of confinement, we generally think of something that has some pretty like heavy negative connotations, and all of us are obviously experiencing confinement at the moment. When it comes to COVID, some of us are experiencing that confinement in our finances, or relationally. It's like, it's tough to be away from people, and so there's confinement in those areas. But the type of confinement that our child is currently experiencing, like literal confinement inside my body, I guess, is completely different, and it's actually such a good thing, and it's such a life-giving thing. So as much as they say like a child has a 60% viability or like chance of survival in life from 24 weeks, the best thing for this child is actually to stay in that confinement for as long as possible. yeah, and so it's maybe a little bit of like a strange parallel to draw, and we definitely don't want to like overharp this analogy, but yeah, there's this reality of how much I've learned in this season of waiting, and this kind of pondering on this idea of confinement and what that means for our child, but also how that relates to what so many of us are going through at the moment, and yeah, just literally being confined to those small spaces. So yeah, I wanted to share just a little bit on those parallels that I was able to draw, or those comparisons I was able to make, just in thinking through like pregnancy and that life-giving kind of confinement, as well as COVID and restriction, and just the general confinements we find ourselves in life outside of like a COVID situation. So yeah, I've learned firstly that confinement is not always easy, and so in the first trimester of this pregnancy, like, it was chaos. Like, it was a wild time. I was always somewhere between, like, to be very blunt, like throwing up, or like falling asleep in public spaces, or like not being able to handle the smell of like my own kitchen, yeah, and a whole lot of other like random details that I'll spare you the details of. But yeah, it was pretty tough in the beginning, and as much as I really am feeling like a heck of a lot better now physically, there's still stuff that like we need to navigate. I mean, we live on a different continent to most of our family and like our long-standing friends, and so yeah, that comes with like its challenges. Like, this is the kind of thing that you do want to share with people, and even with you guys, like I'd love to share more of this season, and I feel like every time I see people, they're like, oh, your tummy's growing, and I'm like, I know it's been growing, but I just don't get to like see you guys and share that. And there's also kind of the confinement around like Chad not being able to come to any of our appointments, and the scans and stuff, and just the uncertainty of whether he'll be able to be there when I do eventually like have this baby. And yeah, I know June is a far time away, and there's a lot that can change by then, but yeah, it's just a lot of stuff that comes, I guess, with this confinement situation. And yeah, the reality is that confinement isn't always easy, but at the same time, there's something that I've like kind of really learned about the value and the importance of like allowing the confinement to happen when it needs to. So obviously in this case, like, this baby is confined within me for like plus minus 40 weeks, depending on yeah, when they decide to arrive. But for every week that this little bean like grows inside of me, there's new development, and there's new skills, and there's new aspects to who they are and what they're able to do that they're learning. And so I have like 3 different apps that I read, because I'm a little bit of like a research junkie sometimes. But yeah, the one week they learn to breathe, and the next week they're able to blink, and then the reflex that they kick their legs with grows or like develops. And yeah, there's this incredible like sense of development and maturity and ability that comes in the time of confinement for our little one. And yeah, I think like these are all things that are happening in the best interest of the child's future, if you know what I mean. And so yeah, I mean, I've been trying to read as much as I can, and like talk to friends, and yeah, just kind of like, I guess, prepare for parenthood, if that's even a real thing. Everyone tells you like you read books and stuff, and then eventually you get to the real thing and you're like, I don't even know what the book said, I'm just gonna go for it. So but yeah, I mean, you try to prepare and you try to make the most out of this time of confinement in order to like better prepare. And so yeah, I think there was just kind of this revelation that the time of confinement is actually really valuable. And I think, yeah, as much as there's that sense of struggle, and there's that sense of like urgency and like wanting to be at the finish line, like all of this is for a purpose, and all of this is to like meet our child and to bring new life into the world. And obviously that's the end goal. Like, that's what we would prefer, rather than the confinement that we're in, or like the pregnancy. Like, the pregnancy is amazing, but it's for something greater. But there's so much value and so much purpose in this season. And so I think that's also just like another parallel to what we're going through at the moment. I know quite a few people mentioned that in their videos last week, of even the certainty and the uncertainty. But one of those certainties is that like God always has purpose, you know, he always has direction, he always has a greater plan than what we can see right now. And so I guess in this like literal pregnancy season of confinement, there's so much purpose, and it's so necessary, and it's so good, as much as it's not like the desired outcome right now. Like, it's exactly what we need right now, if that makes any sense. But more than anything, I think I'm falling more and more in love with this little human. Like, every time I feel the move, like it makes those times when I was like throwing up 4 times a day, it just like suddenly makes it worth it, and you're like, whatever, like that doesn't even matter. And we were doing the scan with the doctor the other day, and he's like, oh look, there's the foot with the little toes. And all of a sudden, the fact that I had to get out of bed like 2 to 3 times last night just to go pee again, like suddenly doesn't like matter. Suddenly those restrictions and that confinement and that difficulty like diminishes in the value of something so much greater, you know? Like every time like Chad turns around at night before we go to sleep, and he always says goodnight to the baby, and every time I read about something new and I like understand something new about this child, or I talk to a friend, or I pray about our baby's future, like there's these incredible moments that happen within this season that like make it all like so worth it. And the longer you go through it and the deeper you go, the more fruitful it is. And I think I can see that in even something like my marriage with Chad is like that's not confinement, but the longer we go and the deeper we go, the more fruitful it is. It's like the better we love each other, the more we serve each other, the less selfish we are. The longer we go and the deeper we go, the more we see like the fruits of something good. And I think like it's very much the same with church and with community and with just what we're doing here. Like the longer we do this and the deeper we go together as individuals and as friends and as community and as family, like the more fruit we'll start to see. And it's the same in this season of confinement. I think like just those 3 things. Like I know it's hard, and there are things that are hard, and like those hard things don't go away, but this season is so worth it. There's so much like fruit that comes out of it when we like stick it out for its intended length of time, and when we go deep in that time, when we just kind of like commit to the process, I guess, a little. In like the longer we go and the deeper we go, the more fruitful it is. I don't think that confinement is necessarily like the only way that God can work, but I do think that where we find ourselves today, whatever that confinement looks like for you, it might not even have anything to do with the fact that you're locked in your house. It might be completely removed from that. It might be like a financial situation or an emotional situation or a health situation. Like whatever that confinement is in your life, like I want to encourage you just to trust the process and to trust God above that circumstance and through that circumstance, and to know that tough it out, be willing to go deep with God, and to know that He is at work in each of our lives, and there's something fruitful coming at the end of it.
So it is Valentine's Day today, and Valentine's Day worldwide celebrates love. And I think it's so fitting for us to just start off by speaking about how love develops in our hearts. And I think Valentine's Day has been creating anxiety in teenagers since forever, because guys, it's like that day on the 14th of February when people start to wonder, am I loved? Do I have a Valentine's? Even my son, 7-year-old son, said, oh, but this Valentine's Day I don't have a Valentine's. So I said, when have you ever had a Valentine's? Like, is there something I don't know? And it's part of this thing where it's a day where people start to ask questions around love. Like, am I loved? Do I have someone who cares? We write letters of love to one another. I just think of like the school grounds on Valentine's Day. Everyone's written little letters and they're sending it. Now it's probably just a WhatsApp, but my day it was letters, and you'd write a letter, and people were just expressing their love for one another. Not that a 14-year-old knows what love is, but they were attempting, and they would get creative with it, expressing their love. But at the core of that is the desire that that love would be reciprocated. At the core of that letter, while they're writing it, they're not hoping that that person would experience the love that's in their heart. They're hoping, the deep down hope is that that love or that acceptance or that affirmation or appreciation is reciprocated. And the core of the gospel is that every desire to be loved is under promise, because we receive more than what we even desire. That every time we turn to God, we receive love. Every time we look into His eyes, they are full of grace. Never judgmental, never going to blame you or remind you of your past. He's taken our past as far as the east is from the west. He doesn't recall that. He's thrown it away. And He did that because of His Son and what His Son sacrificed on the cross. And so, since forever, God has been producing love in us by showing us love. And what Lisa just shared is this beautiful picture of what it takes to produce love in your heart. You see, if she was given a baby one day, like, here's your baby, it would start the process of developing a love in her heart towards this baby. But now, when that baby is born, she's got a 9-month process of developing an affirmation and a love and an affection for a baby she doesn't even know yet. We had 2 miscarriages in amongst having our 3 children, and those 2 miscarriages rip your heart out. They get to your guts. They rip something out of you, and you can't explain it, but somehow you lose something so dear to you, but you'd never even had it. Because you see, love can be developed when you can't even see it. And sometimes people battle with the idea of an invisible God loving them. You just need to understand, like, I get it, because I had a love for children I'd never seen. I'd never even seen the effects. Those babies we'd never even seen a kick on Jane's stomach yet. It was something that we had to believe in because of the effects on Jane. And you see, when I look around, there are more evidences all around me every day of God's love and grace towards me. Just community is such a picture of God's love and acceptance towards me. And when I open my heart up to that, see, because our hearts are hard, we can't receive love, because hurt people hurt people. That's how the saying goes. Hurt people hurt people. And it's basically the people that have been hurt end up hurting other people, because we mistrust people, and we don't trust people's motives, and so we hold them at an arm's distance, at arm's length, and we keep them there because we don't want to let them in, because we don't want to get hurt. And you see, hurt people hurt other people, and eventually people get hurt because of that. But you see, loved people love. And I want us to be a community of loved people, because we understand the love of the Father. The reason we're reading through Matthew at the moment is so you can see the love of the Father sending His Son to die and just loving on people. From loving on His disciples, from loving on people He knew would betray Him, from loving on the Pharisees, to loving on a lady found in adultery, a lady at the well who didn't deserve His love. He just loved and loved and loved. And I'm hoping that you experience His love as you read Scripture. And then I'm hoping that you see the evidence of His love through community. And I love Christian community, not because of community. I love Christian community because it's such a picture of Christ and His kingdom. It's a picture of what we're going to live in for eternity. Right now, Lisa is producing a baby, but actually they're starting to make plans at home already. They're reshaping their house. They're kicking Alex out soon. They're going to change the way they do life because this baby is coming. Can they see the baby yet? No. Do they know what the baby will look like? No. Do they know the gender? Well, we'll all find out on Friday night, tonight. So by Sunday, by the time you're watching this, we found out the gender, but they don't even know what gender it is till recently, till halfway through the pregnancy. You see, often we have to develop a love inside of us for something we can't see yet and experience. And I believe one of the things we put on the website, Freedom City website, is we are called to love and serve Lisbon. Love Lisbon, serve Lisbon, Freedom City. That's what we're called to do in this place. We are here today, and we're doing this because there came a point in John 3 where He says, "For God so loved the world that He gave His only begotten Son." We have to understand, like in James, that love without actions is dead. Love is not a feeling. Love is not an emotion built up in a moment in a church meeting. See, a lot of Christians know love from the Father to be when they listen to a worship song, or somebody shares the love of God with them, and like there's these moments that you then have to replicate, ongoingly replicate, to experience the love of God. And I often found Christians who enjoy that space, or like over prioritize that space, when normal life's happening and you're changing nappies and things suck and you don't have enough money, they can't experience love. Because in that moment they feel like, oh, all I need to do is escape to a church meeting. I need to escape to have a quiet time. No, you need to realize that in the midst of that, God's love is being poured out. And why do I say that? Because love without actions is dead. God's love is not a feeling that He shows you or exposes you to. God's love is the hand of God providing for you. So He provided a solution for the separation between us and Him through His Son. And God provides through us in community, sometimes financially. Sometimes He provides for us by giving us hope. Sometimes He provides for us by giving us courage. Sometimes He provides for us by giving us a wife who will be the one to mold us and shape us. Sometimes He puts someone in your life that actually confronts you on something, that sharpens you. Sometimes He puts someone that really irritating in your life. Sometimes He allows you to go into poverty so that you can realize the reason you got into poverty, so He can save you from living into that for your future. And so I want to ask us to do three things. Can we pray? Can you pray for yourself? Pray for your own heart. Pray that your heart would be quietened. Pray that your heart would be open. Pray to God. Relinquish some things to God so that He can love you. Tell Him what you're battling with. Tell Him where you condemn yourself. Tell Him where you need to be loved. Be honest with Him. He can handle it. And then pray for those close to you. You see, it's impossible to be praying for people and hold grudges. It's impossible to be praying for people and not love them. For a husband to pray for his wife and then to hold something against her, it's really hard when you truly are praying. And not praying that someone would change. Praying that God would show them love if they never change. Praying that God would be gracious to them when they least deserve it. Pray that they would find a spacious place to express themselves and to enjoy their lives. Pray that they would be blessed financially. Pray for people that owe you money, that God would bless them financially. Not so that they'll pay you back. Actually tell them they don't have to pay you back. But pray for people and you'll see God will open up your hearts towards them. And then let's pray for the city. Let's pray for people we don't know. Pray for people that you've come across. Pray for everyone. Just pray. And you'll see God just put a love inside of your heart. And it opens yourself up to be loved. And it allows you to love others. And then secondly, let's be generous. I say this, I've actually said to a few people, I'm never going to talk about money. Imagine I never have to talk about money. And someone said to me, yeah, but that would be the worst thing you could do for people. And I realize it is. And I want to say to you, can we learn a greater level of generosity? God's way of blessing is through generosity, because God knows that when we damn things and we try and we'll actually never, God actually blocks. He sets a limit on your income when you just try and create a dam. Because if He blesses damming, then we learn that it's a good thing. But what God does, He waits for us to just break a hole in the wall and get a flow going so that He can create a river, because then it can flow through you, through others, through, and then the river of God starts to flow. You see, somehow, I don't know why, God uses finances as a key, as an indicator, a light indicator on our dashboard, but He uses it as a way to get into our hearts. And I think if we can use generosity, then, and the reason I want you to do this is because I want you to see the favor of God, the graciousness of God, and the flow of God into your life. Because the more you see it into your life, the more you'll let it go out of your life. God uses tithing not as a mechanism to take care of churches. He uses it to release something inside of us. You see, that's the opening of the sluice gate. But then there's more than that. God says, like, you've still got 90% of your salary. What are you going to do with it? You can say, well, 90% doesn't even cover my expenses. Exactly. You need to get the river flowing. And then you start to invest. And this is where we start to invest in people and invest in relationships and invest into people that the Bible says that you'll never get a return from, but that you invest something into their hearts so God can use it to do something in their hearts. You see, the more you receive, the more you give, the more you start to receive. It's just like this vicious flow. Like, I can testify. Ask Jane. We can testify. You cannot outgive God. There is no way you can outgive God. I promise you of that. Like, we are trying to, and we can't. It is, yes, you must be responsible. Yes, you need to plan. Yes, you need a budget. But yes, you need to be generous. And I'm saying this because I'm talking about love. You see, where your treasure is, there your heart is. And I want to ask you to sow your treasure into people. Sow your treasure into your spouse. Sow your treasure into what you believe in. And what you sow into, that's where your heart will be, and you will see a return in that area. Thirdly, just this. Can we make our thought life and our speech about others and not ourselves? Let's practice that for a couple of weeks. We practice making our lives not about us. Watch every conversation you have. Do you have to include, when someone's talking about something, so they're saying, when I traveled and I went to this country, do you then have to include, yes, when I went to that country, I also did this? Or do you have to include, I went to this country and I found, when I started looking at it, I found myself doing it. It was a horrible exercise. I realized how I always have to include myself in the story. Why I always want to share my experience. And it's like I realized how self-centered I am. See, God wants to do so much inside of us as a community, but He wants to do so much in the city, and He needs people of love. We can be doing all sorts of things, but I want to be a church that is full of love. Have an awesome week, guys.